I'd be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through.
Love it. Toni Lane Casserly, I'm so excited to have you on the show again. You are amazingly talented across even your voice, you know, you have worked it so well. Like, that's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's amazing. It is. It's so cool that you can sing, because the voice is right here with us all the time. We don't need another instrument.
100%. And voice can also be used for energetic clearing, finding harmony and resonance. I think you're more in tune as you move through life. If you have a background, whether that background is in music, sports, reading, science, I think if you have the ability to tune into something, you know, because people talk about singing like it's this process of like expression, like I'm gonna do this big operatic like da, 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 da. But it's not. When you actually sing, you are tuning into empathetic experience. Because when I practice a song, I grew up doing this. And when I would grow up performing, I didn't think that the show was me, because it wasn't. Every show was different because I could feel the audience. And there are different times where people would want something different from me. You practice the song 100,000 times so that you know it, so that when you perform, you're not the one up there performing. It's you channeling the experiences from every person around you through you. And when you channel those experiences, then you're actually giving someone a performance. Otherwise, it's just sound. There's nothing like, and that's why performance is so important even to experience live. For you to be a part of that creative process, because the audience is just as much a part of the creative process as the artist who's on stage performing the work.
You're delivering an experience for an audience, and you're energetically playing with what's present there with the audience. This isn't about just whatever's there, whatever you want to do. This is based on what the experience is calling in the moment for the audience. And I think that same thing applies to comedians as well.
For sure. Yeah. Anyone who's on stage.
Anyone who's on stage, even the lecturers, etc. Yeah. Very interesting way to put it. And it is so cool that you could go all the way to your opera voice, to your more like jazzier voice. It's cool to be able to do that. I got to work my voice more. All right, yeah, everyone, pay attention. You're gonna hear me singing in a year. We'll see about that. Wow.
But it's actually the key thing more than anything is that it's actually about a level of empathy in the harmonics of everything that is. Because when you're feeling, sometimes you can even cleanse someone and their field, because you can feel. Right. Sometimes I'm around someone, it's kind of like why I'm so, I think, sensitive, because sometimes I'll be around people and I'm like, whoa, I can just look through them. And then in looking through them, I can surface and presence things that people are like, man, I've been struggling with that problem for the last 15 years. Damn. And no one has ever, I haven't actually spoken about this. I actually had recently someone say, you know, I haven't spoken to anyone about this in 5 years, and I've known you for 30 minutes. And you just literally touch this. It's like I can find the boom, 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 tonal resonance, and then you can just get that pain out and like release it. And that's actually what, for me, music always was. It was expression and empathy, but it was also actually an energetic cleansing. It was calibrating my field harmonics to release from stored energy. That's actually what you need. People think that like having a spiritual practice is like, oh, I meditate. But part of what you actually need to do is cleansing your field happens in many different ways. Totally. Maybe running is your spiritual practice. Totally. But you need to move. You need to move and cleanse your energy. Yes, yes. And whether that's through moving sound through your body, moving the ocean and the sun through your body when you surf, whether that's through moving other people through your body when you perform. right? You need to have something that can both cleanse your field and hopefully in turn can help provide a greater resonance for more people to get in touch with their heart again. Because that's what people lose, that gift connects people with. It brings you back to your heart. And if you're not living there, just check yourself even right now. Like do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, can I feel myself? And can I feel where my energy is at? Can I feel my own heart? And if I don't, what am I hiding from? If there's a place where I don't feel connected, or where I feel overly connected, or where I feel a block, even where I feel pain or joy, what is present for me in this moment? Because that is all that is this moment now. In the midst of everything else that exists, the importance of being present remains. Because your field right now, your energetics, your harmonics, this is actually structuring the evolution of your entire conscious pathway. Mm-hmm. And what is in you, they say the law of attraction is like you can just think things into existence, but it's also a process of, can you harmonize with someone's energy? Mm-hmm. And can you reach harmonic resonance? Because if you can do that, then you actually have the power to let the world move through you. But if you're blocked, that's what you'll experience in life. You'll experience that your life is like a series of roadblocks, and you're like, why do I keep, why do I keep going through this challenge? I don't want to have to deal with this, or I don't want to have to be around this, or blah. But what is really the problem, it's not that you're not a victim, okay? You get out, victim consciousness is like here, okay? You got to get out of that level. It's like, no, it's actually that you have to recalibrate yourself. You're experiencing that because your body, you are asking yourself to experience that. That's the only reason why. And it might not even be the highest version of you, but you're experiencing what you're experiencing because of the way that you presence yourself. And if you don't, then what flows through your life and what flows through your field of illusions is directly and inherently based on the harmonics of what exists in you. So, I mean, change your harmonics, change your life.
Yeah, there's a huge reason to sing, to learn how to sing. You get to carry it with you, and then also there's this energetics, there's this harmonics that you speak of, that the heart, every time it beats, every second, like you got us to feel our hearts, it's a muscle that we have to train to be able to tune inward and feel our heartbeat. And so when you sing, you're unleashing a vibration throughout your being. And yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that you could help someone else with a blockage that they have through your voice, because when you sing, Ron and I in here, we're like, whoa, like this feels amazing. There's something about it. It's like when you play an instrument. Similarly, if you tune into the instrument, you kind of melt in an essence. It's so profoundly important for us to care more about that. So Toni Lane Casserly, you guys can watch the episode that we had together earlier this year. So known as the Joan of Arc of blockchain, advocate, a digital currency advocate and speaker across the world, spends most of her time in a briefcase now. Suitcase. Yeah. Oh yes, briefcase would be too small for Toni.
I could probably working on doing the contortion stuff, so trying to get to a briefcase level, but that really takes some skill. So
lots of speaking around the world, teaching people about decentralization, especially about the importance of decentralization in governance, and as we make a big transition to having more effective protocols for humanity to flourish more easily.
Yeah.
And so that's been with culture, with Telegraph, with shEOS. There's a bunch of different things here. All these links are in the bio. Go check out Toni's work in more detail. So we have a couple topics that we want to talk about today in our second episode together. Besides harmonics, and yes, that was so fun. It was a great way to intro the episode. That was the second time we've introed with music. We had Paulette intro and outro with guitar. We would love for you to outro with your voice as well.
Okay.
That would be awesome. Okay, let's talk about, so we have infinite economy is
Yep.
something that we want to talk about. We also want to talk about this spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
I think let's start off with, because you just came in with the spiritual bypass. For me,
Do you see how your body's even contracting?
yeah,
when
I
you're saying
did.
it?
It
You're
did.
Like, oh! I was watching you do that earlier when we were talking
Oh.
about it. Like, and that's even being, that's what I mean about presencing. It's like noticing where, like, when someone says something, rather than reacting, like noticing, like, oh, like, where does that sit? Am I literally like crunched over? Like, where does that sit in my body?
Yeah.
Because then you'll be able to presence your feeling before you react. And that level of consciousness is actually something that it's really, I think, like just maintenance for healthful behavior. So you can control, rather than responding like, oh, I'm like so triggered, you can presence, be like, oh, wow, like that makes me just go and contract, rather than just like responding, like being the response that you feel. Presence your feeling and then respond.
Yeah, that's so
yeah.
good. That's so good. That's a major principle of the meditative philosophy and the mindful principles. Spend more time cognizing and feeling rather than reacting right away. But it's a muscle. Again, it's something that has to be trained. It's not just I'm going to intellectualize this. No, it's an actual thing.
Yeah.
And, okay, it's holiday time, people. Holiday time. Holiday time means you are going to be passing time with your family. You're going to be passing time with these triggers. And so this is the best time right now over holiday time to practice not getting triggered,
For sure.
but rather to be calm, feel, and then react with a question. Why does somebody feel the way they do? Anyway.
And compassion.
And compassion,
Yeah.
especially, with your family.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
For sure.
For sure.
All right.
So spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, because this it's interesting. We've done 2 shows with Bernard Gunther now. Also, we just did a video on us not being ready for transhumanism, and that's one of the theses that Bernard writes about and that we care about, because we don't think we understand ourselves well enough yet to merge with machines, and so. And Toni calls this the spiritual bypass, and I was like, whoa, that's a really good way to put it. So teach us about why you call it spiritual bypass.
So I work with indigenous nations, and the spiritual bypass is basically like this whole subculture of people who are like, yeah, like, are you guys like gonna go do ayahuasca this weekend? Like, I'm like so into mushrooms. Like, I like love like all of these like super like ibogaine. Yeah, I mean like combo. Like, look at all my scars. And it's basically a group of people that use spiritual work as social validation without actually doing the work. So they're like, yeah, I've done ayahuasca like 50 times. And then you're like, really? Because it seems like you're still like, also like addicted to ketamine and like really deeply unconscious about where you're at in your life and like doing things that are pretty harmful to yourself and others. Like, so it doesn't really seem like you might have like taken the drug, but you haven't done the medicine. And so spiritual bypassing is like this whole subculture of people that's
My heart's on fire right now.
For sure.
Just letting you know, it's like really like that. I felt a big from when you were speaking that way about, because I haven't met people like this.
Yeah.
I've heard, I've gotten close like to people that kind of get close to that, but I mean, the way you're saying it right now is really, because this is a sacred thing.
Yes.
Actually communing with the infinite.
Exactly. And but what's real is that if you're not at that level, spirits are kind of like, they can't do the work. Like, and that's the thing, is that if you're basically like not making space for the work to be done because you're like afraid of facing the stuff, the spirits are like, okay, well, I have other people to work with. Like, it's about, and that's the thing, is like, for me, it's really like, this is an honor. This is a spiritual honor for you to engage in that medicine and that practice. And the other problem that I have with it personally is that it's exploiting indigenous communities.
That's right.
By making it this little fashion drug where people are like, oh, like, we're gonna go do this in like my New York basement. Like, I totally got this from like, I like totally got like all this ayahuasca from like this, like, like this guy, but like, it's like, yeah, like, and not knowing anything about the medicine, the tradition, the history. And so it's like these people that are like wearing the head dresses, and I know, now granted, I do know some people that lead that are not technically indigenous, but are incredible priestesses and are incredible at holding the space for ceremony and always curious to learn and respect and honor. So there's definitely the other side to that coin.
Yes.
But then there are these people that are like, you know, wearing the mohawks to Coachella and then drinking cups of ayahuasca and just being like, yeah, like it's so cool, like space, space, what? And that's an entire subgroup of people. Exactly, yeah, your face, exactly. But that doesn't just happen in a spiritual work dimension. This can also happen in other ways, like you denying your own feelings about something. Like a spiritual bypass is basically a way that you're lying to yourself and you're denying yourself, but you're saying that you're doing the work. And if you're saying that you're doing the work, but you're lying and denying the work that needs to be done, then there's a problem. You know, if you say, I really want to help people that are living in, like I really am extremely passionate, I want to devote my life to helping people that live in poverty, but then you like go to Whole Foods and buy yourself $700 shoes, then it's kind of like, are you really devoting your resources intensively to that cause, or are you like stepping out and representing a cause that you're not actually representing with your actions? Yeah. So a spiritual bypass is when there's a lack of alignment between between preach and practice. Or where someone is at with where someone claims to be at with their values and the system of values that they actually represent.
And we're facing a huge one. You're talking about this on an individual level, which is extremely important at individual level. And then there's the societal one that's going on, where we're merging with machines and we don't have any human ethics built yet.
So that's the other, so we were talking about this earlier, that there's this level at which I think that people are all like, there's this whole transhumanist movement, but I think we've actually got that totally wrong. I think science fiction actually got that totally wrong. In that I think the next evolution is something that's gonna make us more deeply human than deny our humanity, because I think if we continued to, I think most of that theory is based on the idea that we will continue to deny our own humanity until we reach a certain point where we can no longer continue to be human, because we'll have destroyed the planet and we'll have destroyed the earth and we'll no longer live on Earth and we'll have to migrate to another planet and then we'll all become robots, because what this actually represents is a group of individuals who structure philosophy based on their fear of dealing with unconscious traumas that they or others hold. And based on the idea that as a society, we will never effectively deal with those unconscious traumas. And so we will continue to deny our ability, it's a Freudian, we will continue to deny our ability to be human because we've so repressed the humanity of ourselves and of each other that the denial and the transhumanism is easier than becoming more deeply human. But I actually think that's fundamentally wrong. And I don't think that's the way things are going to totally shake out. Now, will there be the ability for us to transcend form? Yeah, we continue to evolve and we continue to transcend form, but are we going to transcend form in a way that makes us less human? No. I believe the first thing we're going to have to learn, and what we will actually be incented to learn by AI and robot labor, is how to become more human, how to develop more empathy, how to transcend the traumas of social norms that have been used to shame, oppress, guilt, fear, judgment, violence, jealousy, that grief. I believe that we will, although some of those things will still exist, I believe that we'll work first to free ourselves from our inhumanities before we accept those inhumanities as real. I don't think we can, you can't reach a state of higher consciousness fully living from the seat of inhumanity. I would say that's not you reaching a state of higher consciousness, that's you reaching a level of information based on holding a very low vibration, and that's actually extremely, 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 extremely dangerous.
Those things you listed, those 7 or 8 items you listed, those are extremely low vibration. Yeah. And it's low vibration to move forth with the childlike mentality. We're like a 2-year-old that's given in a preschool playground that's given a box of guns, and they have to figure out how to work amongst each other to split up the guns properly.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's really bad in terms of just the ethics that have evolved on Earth and where we're at. And so the way you talk about what AI and robots will provide us, being that we become more human. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time looking inward, and I'd be curious to hear how you think that we would then, how AI and robots would help us tune more inward and go through sincere self-work.
Well, we need an intervention. We need an intervention.
So
and if we
what
don't
that
have
is.
an intervention, then I believe there will be this world of like, people say like me and like our robot AI overlords. And I don't believe that is going to happen. I think that these are largely going to be seen, largely, not completely, I think these will largely be seen as beneficial things. However, I think that because humanity's will to survive is so strong, stronger than the thing that we create, I believe that the will of humanity to survive is stronger than the will of the systems that we will create, because I don't believe that that inherent process is something, we wouldn't put our existence at risk to that extreme. I don't believe that we as a human race would put our existence at risk to that extreme. And
I think you wouldn't, but I think very greedy people would.
Well, so there's a level at which, to just kind of center here, there's a level at which AI is making dictatorship more efficient. And that's definitely a conversation that we can have. Like, how are these tools actually being used? It's kind of like the conversation about blockchain that no one wants to hear, that I have to keep. I have a paper actually coming out from Institute for the Future, I think later this month, where I talk about this. And it's important to understand the implications of dictatorships using blockchain, as it is important to understand the use of blockchain for new systems of governance, for democratic or even post positive democratic systems.
I don't think we've talked about that. So will you teach us about how blockchain can be used for bad, like for dictators?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is like so I am invited to blockchain conferences all over the world, but do you know like what governments are really making a lot of hubbub, public interest and noise about using blockchain technology and digital currency? It's dictatorship. The largest ICO ever to date is the Venezuelan Petro.
Damn.
That is the single largest ICO that's ever happened.
And that's a country, that's a national, the Petro is a national cryptocurrency
it's backing
Venezuela?
The Venezuelan currency as a crypto backed on oil and their economic interests. It's the single largest ICO that's ever been done. Why are dictators interested in using blockchain? Well, it's for pretty much the same reason that anarchists are, because blockchain eliminates the need for banks. It's just that for anarchists, they want to eliminate the use of government, and for government, they want to eliminate the need for the middleman. Or not government, but dictatorship. Dictatorship's like, oh cool, we could take out the bank, have a fewer check and balance, and then literally own the entire money supply, so that any person who builds an ICO or is an entrepreneur in our country, it is going to be illegal for them to use blockchains outside of our national blockchain, or if they build on another currency, they're going to have to peg it to the crypto whatever dictator currency, the crypto petro or whatever. Now, Venezuela is not the specific dictatorship that was, I can't reveal that, they're not the specific dictatorship that was talking about doing that, but that is where their interests are, and that is where multiple people's interests are. I mean,
because you have the voluntary anarchists that are trying to say, hey, let's all love each other, let's just get rid of the middlemen, but let's all...
Well, I don't know if voluntary anarchists are saying let's all love each other.
Look, let's say let's give them the benefit of the doubt. The super on one side is these, let's all figure out how to completely understand ourselves and love each other across the planet and not have governance, blah blah. Great. And then on the other side of things, there's apparently now is the wiping out the banks so that you can own all of the value exchange of a country, and you're basically wiping out the checks and balances of your power. So that way there's no one checking and balancing the power of a dictatorial government, and they get to have full reins over. If the entrepreneurs don't want to give a certain amount of whatever, they get whatever control they want over the entrepreneurs and just the movement of value. So that's actually what it is. Holy shit. Yeah, that's really fucked up.
There's a story written by someone called Luca Magnotta, and but the thing is, like, if we don't understand these implications now, we're not going to build better systems. We have to understand that these are the people who are interested in advance, and they're interested to be more selfish. And so we have to create, like Buckminster Fuller, you don't make an existing system obsolete by trying to fight it. That's happening.
You build a better system.
Let's build better economies. This is why the need for innovation and support in this space is so huge. Let's build better economies. And I would say the same thing with AI, who, I mean, luckily we have, luckily or challengingly, we have other like giant corporations that may have stronger interest in artificial intelligence than dictatorships. But at the same time, it's a question of, there's a lot to unpack there. But all we really need to do to be a success and to continue to merge down the path of liberty, liberation, and freedom is to continue to do what we're built to do as human beings, which is to create. That is how we grow. That is how we survive. That is our design. That is how we are built. That's how we're made.
Ron, can you throw up what we have on NDI? Because so Toni, you can see right here on studio. Oh. So this is the good use of blockchain technology. This is good use of decentralization. This is our ability to do things like make sure that someone who owns property or land in a place that doesn't have the proper the proper protection for that place can't just have someone that has a tremendous amount of power just come in and wipe out that person's land or property and say that person doesn't exist. They could just kill them, etc. This is universal citizenship ID, universal love agreements. So this is culture, and the link is below for the culture is future Telegram. So you can join that and talk about it more. But this is like a beneficial use versus the horrible use, and so it's good to be able to have this is what it can be used for. Yeah.
So this is basically a global jurisdiction, and what that means is that the promise of blockchain can still become a reality, and that we will shift our relationship to things like, if you live in a government that says, okay, well, guess what, being gay, punishable by death, right? Absolutely not. Just because you were born in a different country than me or someone else doesn't mean that a person should have more or less rights, merely based on the fact that this is where your soul came in. Yep. So it's the ability for you to say, I want to register my contract outside of a traditional jurisdiction where my sexual orientation might be punishable by death, and I want to have this contract verified by a network of my peers and perhaps institutions, human rights organizations, support groups, or supportive nations who actually want to give me full ownership over my rights regardless of where I am. And so this is the ability for you to take ownership over your agreements outside of the bounds of a traditional nation as verified by a network of your peers, with the potential to engage in verification from institutions who are a part of participating in protocol creation.
So let's talk about how this works, because we'll segue into some of the protocol creations, and then I want to also touch on universal earned income.
Yeah.
So what would it look like for the example where someone is living somewhere where they're going to be punished by death for revealing who they truly are? So how would they use culture, and how would culture help them to be safe being who they truly are?
So this is really what Web of Trust does. So Web of Trust is our open source protocol. Now culture is, I've spent the last 5 years of my life trying to figure out how to migrate a lot of people who need to be migrated out of a sociopathic nation state model into, and I'm not saying not everyone's trying to do a good job. There are definitely a lot of people that work in government that are trying to do a good job, and I'm certainly not personally attacking. I'm certainly not personally attacking. I'm merely saying that the incentives in the system are geared toward everything negative about humanity. And I certainly don't mean that comment to say like every person who works in government is that way, because there are wonderful people who work in government, but that the incentives that are baked into the system are basically exploit our people and exploit land so we can have more control. It's not based on creating the greatest good for humans. And certain nations are trying to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think a lot of Scandinavia and like, they probably have the most progressive models. I mean, Iceland actually sent their bankers to jail after the financial crisis, which they're the only country who did that. But there are people who are really trying to do a good job, and there are people who are behaving in a way that is, attempting to maintain a sense of responsibility for the power that or the influence that you're holding, any of those things. So that is the open source protocol, which is Web of Trust, which is basically verification through, and anyone can create on that protocol. So if you want to build specifically, like you want to do only one thing, and the one thing you want to do is marriage, you can create a whole platform for marriage using our protocol. And our protocol is a completely open source piece of software. Our business model for the blockchain commons is like Red Hat. And then CULTU.RE is my for-profit company, which is an interface that I've spent the last 5 years basically figuring out that talking about making a nation on the blockchain isn't going to work. Because
Why?
what you have to deal with is going through the system. If you want to create a nation, I mean, look at like Vit Jakita, who's probably the most successful person doing this today, and we're both mutual supporters of each other. He's doing Liberland. And it's basically this marsh in between Croatia and, I'm bad at geography. I want to say it's not Serbia. But it's in between Croatia and another country. Maybe it is actually. Mm-hmm. And it was like this marsh, and Vit was a member of parliament, and he was like, huh. He's like, what is happening with that marsh? And they're like, oh, like it was like a territory, they couldn't agree on what would be done with it, and so it's basically been unoccupied for 100 years because there was a dispute that they never resolved, so they just said, well, no one owns that little marsh, who cares? So he said, oh, stuck a flag in it, and he's like, Liberland, libertarian paradise, it's ours now, all the libertarians have claimed it, we're building everything on the blockchain. But Vit, who's like doing this, like he is going out there every day, he just opened an embassy in San Francisco, like this is his life, like he is the president of a country built on this marsh that's basically like in this legal battle. And he's going out there every day.
What
he's
is
like,
it called?
Liberland, Liberland. And so Vit's going out there every single day to try and make this an actual country. They're registering. Now, people didn't take this seriously until Vit said, we're registering businesses on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And then people were like, whoa, okay, you're starting commerce? Okay. Now let's take a look at you.
Of course,
let's
once
see
there's
what you're
commerce,
about.
yeah, of course.
And
Liberland, officially the Free Republic of Liberland, is a micronation claiming an uninhabited parcel of disputed land on the western bank of the Danube.
Oh, it is Serbia.
Between Croatia and
Yes.
Serbia. Good geography. It was proclaimed on 13th of April 2015 by Czech right libertarian politician and activist Vit Jakita.
Yeah.
Vit Jakita. Interesting. So the official website. The border dispute, and then the land in question is 7 square kilometers. So a mile and a half or 2 miles less than San Francisco in squareability.
They started taking people out in boats when they went to Liberland because people were like, we're going to colonize. Libertarians were like, yeah, making a country. And they literally, police were boating. Like if they caught you on the land, it was like boating you off. Like there's this extreme resistance. And like, yes, you might get recognition from, like I work with indigenous nations. So that's different because there are indigenous nations who have legal recognition. But with something like this, it's like going through the process of making a country. You're basically like, okay, like I need like a like $50 trillion military budget to compete. So it's like
you mean because people are trying to invade it?
No,
and,
because
like, take
they're not
advantage
going
of
to
it?
recognize you as a nation unless you come to them with like trillions of dollars. Like, and even if you have trillions of dollars, like they're not just going to let a billionaire or a trillionaire just say, I'm going to stick my flag in this land, make country. There's like there are a few cases where this has happened, and Vit's not like that, PS, just to clarify, but there are a few cases where people have like, they've taken this one guy who is just like, I'm going to live on a boat. He got like a giant liner and just took it into the middle of the ocean, and he was like, maritime law, I'm a country. And they were kind of like, I mean, okay, you can call yourself a country because you're not really posing a threat to anyone and you're not really doing anything, and like we don't really care. But the process of becoming a country is like really extreme because guess what else exists? Pirates. When I tried to do this, there was
pirates are a big deal on,
and they're real.
But that's the east coast of Africa. We're not talking like 50 miles off of the Pacific coast of California. If you set up a big boat and start taking people to like work there.
But
and
no
stuff.
one's
That
going to
could be
recognize it. Like that's the difference, is that some of these countries, like island nations that have a lot of excess capacity, could say, oh, like our government owns 30 islands, here's one for free, which is actually a process that I was going through with a certain island nation government. And then they looked at me really seriously and they were like, what are you going to do about the pirates? And I was like,
oh, so that's where, so this is an example where like Liberland could need to deal with people invading Liberland to pillage the people there. Oh, I see what you're saying.
But not only that, like the United Nations, getting the like I am rooting for this. I'm rooting for him, but you have to get member states to recognize you.
Yeah.
And that's a big political battlefield. Like the idea for member states still haven't recognized indigenous rights. The closest thing we have is in Guatemala. Guatemala is the first country to have indigenous representation actually structured in their government. And there's a film about that called The Shift of the Ages.
Oh, like like the indigenous people of a country, actually have representation within the governance.
Yep.
Yeah, that's ridiculous that doesn't happen normally.
100%.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this, but I don't think that this is now it's not that it's not a business opportunity, especially in blockchain, but I think that this route will eventually be replaced by something that's more simple. Now there are other systems that are already emerging that are not trying to go. The thing is, like, if you want to take on the battle of, and I'm so proud of him, but if you want to take on the battle,
is legit. They have
legit.
They have a good amount of cryptocurrency, the Liberland merit.
But no one sees it as legit. No one in the traditional nation body will recognize VIT and will recognize Liberland, because they're, one, threatened, and two, for someone to recognize a new nation, really the only way that happens is if a country says, like, if a country agrees on a country, but that's if there's like war, and this country's like, I'm like so done with like this half of this country, so let's just like split it, and then they're like, yeah, like split it, we're done. And, or like, let's like unify. Like the only way that happens, the only way you create a new country is usually war. You don't usually create new countries through peaceful economics. And even if people start to take your peaceful...
also founded in 2015 becomes a little bit, or like 2019, or whenever countries get founded, it becomes a little bit difficult to so-called give, once one domino falls, lots of dominoes will fall. And that, I think there may be some unforeseen consequences that are there could be amazing things that come from this. There will be amazing things, but at the same time, if little pockets of land across, like the California secession and Texas secession and China secession and Switzerland, etc.
Yep.
It can create some turmoil, which is what you were saying as well.
Rather than turmoil, like here's the conclusion that I reached after spending half of my life working with libertarians and anarchists and political revolutionaries.
Yeah.
Why not pursue, that's its whole own story, but why not pursue this path through peace, through the peace of an emergent property that is already being created? And that emergent property is intentional community. Because intentional communities are happening.
And that's what they're doing.
Liberland's the opposite.
They're not an intentional community.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
the opposite.
You wouldn't call that an intentional community?
I would say that so here's the thing, and this is what I've learned after spending 5 years working on the difference between a nation and a community.
Okay.
There are First Nations, there are nation states, there are nations, there are states, and then there are intentional communities. But here's what I learned, like going down the path of nations is a very violent path. And it's a violent path with a lot of politics and a lot of danger. And if you become a serious threat to someone who's afraid, like there's a lot of risk involved in doing something like that, because the institution is a violent institution. So pursuing that path to do anything other than help provide humans with greater access to solve a problem in that path, the thing is, like, if you're trying to create your own nation, you're not solving a problem, you're creating a problem. You're creating a problem for the people that are supposed to accept you. And they're like, why am I going to accept this problem? It's like walking into a group of friends and then like going into their house and like wrecking it. You're like, why would I let this problem back into my house? Because that's how they see people that are saying they're going to create their own nation. They're like, you're not in our little like nation club. So I would say that they are, as a matter of fact, but in terms of the way, and I'm proud of him for what he's doing,
so
what they're trying to do.
a little libertarian island in the marsh may not be the best way to try and push a more just world.
It's not that it's not the right way. I appreciate how he's trying to do things, but I think that there's a level at which I appreciate how he and, you know, like all of these people that are trying to create, I advise several projects who do this. Like there's a Kingsland project, there's like, I've co-founded several of these projects that have been trying to do this. I've been friends with the seasteading guys for years. We were actually doing an event the other week, and Randy, who's like one of the founders of Seastead, he said, I think I've known you longer than I've known any person in this entire room, and that's kind of astounding. And I was like, yeah. That's amazing. So I've been involved in the scene for so long, but it's like there's a level at which it's like, why are you going down the path? People are taking the path of maximum resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm saying,
and this
like,
happened with the Fijian Islands. They were trying to make a libertarian place there, and then the Fijians apparently realized that they would have a significant, their culture would change a lot with tech billionaires coming to Fiji.
But I think there's a level at which so I'm not saying there's not a way to create a sovereign nation, and I'm not saying people should stop trying to do that. I mean, I think that is incredible. And I think if we have a bunch of people doing this all of the time, it's kind of like this force. Like if everyone just starts doing that, it's like, oh wow, like this is taking over. But I think that the way that's going to happen isn't going to be through people leveraging the incentives in the current system, calling it a nation in and of itself. I think that puts a lot of people off. It's either like people are like really radical, like yeah, or they're like, the nation thing seems a little bit like confrontational to me.
So it's polarizing.
It is extremely, extremely deeply polarizing.
And the other option is these intentional communities. What is the difference between what Liberland is doing in an intentional community? An intentional community is baked inside of a nation?
It's kind of the difference between First Nations and nation states. So nation states it's kind of like the eagle and the condor prophecy. Like nation states created the divide. There was like our land and our people were harmonious, like we just stewarded the land and she provided for us and we provided for each other. And then we went through this divide where like we split off into many sub-nations and sub-communities and sub-countries. And in that split, we separated really the head from the heart in our decision-making process. And that's the separation of really like the I don't want to say the illusion, but like the myth of nationalism and the rise of the nation state and the actual human purpose.
So the second that we put borders up was the second that we dropped from our heart up to our head, and then started calling people the other, and
that became a division, and that's why all the spiritual communities were so oppressed, because those who led with their heart were basically on the opposite scale during that division. And so I believe that there's a level at which returning to the principles of being a nation of people who aggregate around culture is far easier than going through like that. I'm not a fighter. I am a lover.
Yeah.
I'm a lover.
Yeah.
And so there's this level at which I find like all of that.
Don't we also have to fight for peace? Don't we have to fight for love in today's world?
That's the total, oh my gosh. Like, do you see, Mother Teresa even specifically said she would never go to an anti-war protest, because it's like you're protesting, it's like you're subjugating the end result. You're like, I want peace, but I'm gonna like fight for it. Like, no, I mean, that's not how you achieve peace.
But if you want peace, you'd meditate or be extremely, mindful or peaceful and whatnot. But then if the push comes to shove and there's oppressive structural violence is going on.
No, you create systems for peace.
So okay, got it. So you're all on the build and create side of things. The more you build and create peace,
yes,
the more it takes over.
And if you stop, like that's the thing, is like it has to be. And the reason why this is amazing for many different reasons, but it's also because it's a process of creation. It's just through that process, being deeply, not with Liberland, although Vit and I are very big supporters of each other, being so, do you hear how it exhausts me to talk about it? Being involved in that process, because it's so strenuous. It's like asking someone to listen to you who's like mildly deaf, and you're like, come on, you just keep like trying to get them to hear you over and over again, and they're like, what? And you're like, just stop. I'll stop talking, you stop talking, just stop. Let's just be done with that right now, because that's just no. I'm good.
Even from your understanding of the differences between how to start up groups of people that have a similar decentralized cause that they want to be a part of, the difference between an intentional community and
a libertarian
battle.
It's a constant battle. This
is
not for Vit, because Vit's actually Vit's actually a great leader. So not for Vit. I think that he just kind of like, his attitude is like, he just kind of, I think, laughs things off. Just keeps going down his path, and he knows who his supporters are. And I mean, Vit is doing really, really, really well. So I think he has a good attitude. But I think for most people, like that process is just like, and that's why he's, I think, doing the work that he's doing so well, is because he remains, I'm actually affected by the amount of conflict. It's like going into a constant battle. And I'm like, I'm like, no, like, I don't want to fight.
But don't
I don't
we
want to
have
battle.
that same thing? Like, don't people look at culture right now
Not the
and
bad.
just, don't people hate culture right now? Because some people hate simulation, right? Some people are jealous of what you're doing.
No,
so
I
some
don't
people
think-
are jealous or hating on building a libertarian nation state in the middle of Serbia and Croatia.
Okay, but there's a difference between like having like some digital haters that are like, oh, like so jealous of your success, cry face,
or they hate what you're doing because they want centralization, maybe.
Well, or someone who says, we could call some people to like show up at his house, like poison his food, show up at his house or whoever's house with like,
that's right.
It's like
that's scary as fuck.
There's a difference between someone who's like, I'm insecure and like I'm gonna use my insecurity to like express it on you, and someone who's like, yeah, like I could kill them.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's the whole, like, that's different. And this is what I mean is like taking this path of like if this person proved to be a threat, not for him, let's definitely nowhere near project that on him, but for like other, like, it's like, if this person proved to be a threat, and that's like how casually stuff like that is like, it's even more casual than that, or sometimes in secret, but
that
it's
a
like
hit will be put on someone that's trying to start an intentional community or a
no, not an intentional community. This is what I'm saying. It's the opposite. Like, don't please don't connect those two.
Connect those two?
Because that's the whole point.
An
is
intentional
that they're
community is like a 10-person house in the middle of a city in the United States that has a similar value system that all wants some sort of a peace amongst each other. And
it's a
they
peaceful
grow their own
solution
food and
to the problem.
And they have their own little events at their place. And
so
you think that finding intentional communities then is a peaceful solver of the crisis of centralization and borders and nations? Man.
It's just that's like the difference is that this is like, it's like at times it feels like you're rubbing your body up a sandpaper mountain, wearing a sandpaper suit, also made of there's also Velcro behind both pieces of sandpaper. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, but not in a way that's like beneficial, like the sandpaper is deteriorating the Velcro, like in a way that just is like, it's like a mountain of friction.
Well, you're basically going against hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. Oh my gosh.
It's not that it's not possible, it's just that why would you
it's
like,
just difficult.
It's not that it's not possible, and I want stuff like this, like I want more people to go out there and create stuff.
Answer that question then that I asked though. Do you think that intentional communities around the world would be a solution to all of the nation states' borders?
It's way easier to build an intentional community than it is to build a nation. I can go out and buy 5,000 acres of land and say, I want to live peacefully with this group of people, like away from that stuff. And we're going to grow our own food and have our own land, and we're going to make our own nation of people, and we're all going to co-create together, and we're going to have a healthy community that can be locally managed, and we can, resolve conflict easily because it's a smaller group of us, and we can all live in a way that encourages us to be more social, to heal more, to talk more, to be more connected with each other, to share more resources, rather than hoarding resources.
When another community has a dispute with another community?
So dispute resolution is a process that we're also like, it's a core process process of the protocol that we're
It's a peaceful
constructing.
dispute resolution.
Restoration. So rather
Okay.
than saying like, let's get super aggressive and like say like we have a dispute and like the winner of this dispute gets the most. That's how the legal system works now. It's like we fight and I win because I get the most. But the end result should not be I get the most, I win. The end result shouldn't be leveled as a zero-sum game. The end result should be, okay, here's a dispute. In order to dissolve, we need to actually restore the situation. And we need to figure out the most effective way to restore the situation. And so, yeah, it's just there's this,
Yes.
we haven't even gotten into the
No, we haven't
life
even,
after death or
no,
any of that. I would
we
have,
haven't, no.
but yeah, there's
This
Yeah.
Tangented us in a very important direction, actually, because I don't think we have yet to highlight what completely decentralized, both intentional communities and libertarian states like Liberland look like what they're going through in order to try and make something that's not a nation state that needs a military that has centralization.
They are their own nation. It's just whether or not they're perceived as an accredited nation based on the number of member states that validate them. And I think in addition to that, there's a level at which global identity is going to become a process of the way that we relate to community more than it's going to become a process of the way that we perceive ourselves as a part of the myth of nationalism. And so
Yes.
my whole point in this is that the incentives are still the same. If you're still playing in the nation state game, the incentives are, I need to hoard resources so we can be seen as a nation, or I need to do this. Like, you're still, why play in the same incentive matrix as a group of people that have murdered their own citizens, are basically geared on violence and destruction and exploitation of our planet? It's like, I don't want to play, listen, like when you're like playing with people on a playground, like everyone's playing the game together, and I have to be frank in that there are ways, like there are good people and there are ways to create structures and protocols from within those systems to help better the quality of human life. But going into those systems in a way that's against them, it's kind of like playing, playing ball with a group of like people that are all, not all, but there's a lot of people that are genuinely terrorists from in that group, even from inside the in-group.
Megalomaniacs. There's a lot of issues.
And so it's like
trauma.
I don't want to. It's not. It's like I don't mean to be rude, but I don't want to play.
I think a lot of the time we have very spiritual people that come on to talk to us that are levels advanced in terms of their connection to Earth and other humans, but they're so far advanced in the timeline of things that they can't figure out how to bring it to the most relatable forms of execution today that can help guide people in that direction in the long term. So I just urge us to work on that, because stuff like this seems like it's going in somewhat of the right direction, but like you also said, there was some that was a little bit like heavy on people being upset at it and whatnot.
But why, like the whole point is like, it's like going in the right direction for a group of people, but like generally, what I'm saying is that there's something like really, people love the idea. It's really sexy to say, we're gonna create a nation and go up against the system. But I'm not interested in working on what's sexy just because it's sexy. I'm interested on actually helping people. I'm not interested in having the most money or having the most things or having the most resources or having the strongest military.
Yeah.
I'm interested in helping people live healthier, happier lives.
Yes.
And so in doing that, I am creating technology that's not based on branding something. The thing is, like, I have to be frank in that, like the Buckminster Fuller quote, like there's just a smarter, and I don't want to say there's a smarter way to do this, like I'm pointing at Vit stuff, because
there's
I think
a smarter
I respect,
way to do Earth. There is a smarter way to do
there is
civilization.
a smarter way to do civilization design.
We are super on the same page, and we talk about that a lot.
Oh gosh.
But now the question is, how do you go from the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution of humanity to the 2018 point that we're at now? And how do you aim to redesign civilization in the year 2019 now that we're entering most effectively to actually get to that point of peace, love, understanding, moving forward, and getting past the megalomaniacs and the corruption and the greed. And so figuring out what to build is just most important to actually get there. One of the most important things. We didn't get a touch on universal earned income, but I think this is a crazy important thing that you started bringing up. Rather than distributing $1,000 per person per month, instead have some sort of an incentive for them to earn that $1,000 every single month, what would that look like?
Oh man, I kind of wish we would have taken a totally different conversation trajectory, because I feel like I just had to expend all of this energy.
That's right, we did.
And I feel like I had to expend all of this energy in this
yeah.
direction that I'm like, I don't even, like, there's no part of me that wanted to go down that energetic path.
Okay, let's go to where, or let's go, if we don't want to go to universal earned income, we can also go to the, I agree, that was a lot of energy. We can also go to the thoughts on death as well on the way.
Or rather that we don't actually die.
Yeah.
But that universal earned income is basically the idea that the future of, it's like, I feel like talking about the nation thing is like zeroing in on like this one little niche thing. It's like looking at the world with blinders on. It's like we're only seeing this one thing, when it's like, actually that's not the opportunity, right? Like, this is not the opportunity to redesign the way the world works, because you're still gonna have to play with the world that doesn't work. So we gotta rip off the blinders to actually focus on building a world that works, instead of focusing all of our time on creating revolution for the one that doesn't. Even if that's all, like, if there's a lot of rage or feelings tied up in that, like, there's just a smarter way to actually do things. There's a smarter way to design civilization. So let's focus on smarter solutions than spending our time on the ideas that may appear to be like, really, like, you know, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I mean, ideas that look like they're interesting, but actually, like, if you look at what's just interesting, or like ideas that are like triggers. Let's not focus our time on the things that traumatically trigger us to say, oh yeah, like the nation sucks, like let's do that. Let's actually spend our time removing the blinders and like letting go of that trauma to focus enough on building a world that works, rather than spending our time trying to fight against and within the one that doesn't, to change it. It's like changing someone who refuses to go to rehab or to therapy. You're like, I can't help you if you refuse to help yourself. And that system is beyond, that system is beyond in so many ways the point of us being able to help it, right? We can do some things to help humanity, maybe from around it, but that system is past the point of, it's past that point.
So, eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we die.
Yeah, that, exactly. And so,
interesting. So you can go through a process of spiritual self-work that if people took that on first and foremost, then we took on doing a globalized, decentralized platform of exchanging value and exchanging resource flows and building. That's a global view on things. That's a, you know, first work on me, then work on us in a decentralized way, rather than all of the nitty gritty zone in on this one thing. Yeah, I hear you. But it was still important to unpack the differences between those.
What he's
that
doing
was pretty
is important.
interesting.
And,
intentional communities and the libertarian states.
Yep.
Can you give us the quick
universal earned income? So I'm working on designing a few different things, like whether they're housing models or access models, and I can get deeper into this with the actual platform the next time that we come on. But it's basically the idea that if you look at the amount of homes in San Francisco that are unoccupied, it's like, I mean, maybe 30% of homes are
30?
unoccupied.
You think it's 30?
I think not just buildings that are unoccupied because they haven't been leased out or things like that, but, you know, landlords. I mean, I'm actually just talking about the percentage of people in San Francisco who are in technology and spend like 2 months out of the year, maybe 3, maybe 4, just like traveling around the world, like being out of the country, and who have enough money so that I don't really want to think about like doing the Airbnb thing. They're like, I don't really need an extra 4K, like I'm good. And also the group of people who are like people who are extremely wealthy from India or China or a country where they say, I have 2 passports. I've spent 6 months of the year in America and 6 months of the year in India or China or, you know, Saudi Arabia. And so they buy these super expensive apartments, but then they leave and no one uses them.
For 6 months out of the year.
And same use case with the number of landlords in San Francisco that have purchased, they have just took a stronghold on real estate, but then they just keep the houses empty. And so why are we not actually effectively leveraging the use of those resources, like Airbnb doing a program that says if, you know, you were affected by the California wildfires, then you have these people who have willingly volunteered you to stay at their Airbnb for free. Mm-hmm. And so programs that essentially say, like, I'm looking at doing this model in Puerto Rico because it has as a state, in the United States technically. And I don't want to say it like that because there's obviously so much cultural and collective trauma around that. And I really don't want anyone to feel like in saying that I am lessening the value of cultural sovereignty for a nation that has basically been oppressed and colonialized, because I certainly don't mean it that way. I merely mean that looking at the spectrum, if you're comparing Puerto Rico to the other 50 states, they've had more foreclosures than any other state in the entire United States, like 27%. I think like there's a 47% total foreclosure. Like they were experiencing like 13 foreclosures a day, and then the hurricane. And so there's like the same thing that happened with the mortgage bubble. Basically, you had all these people from Wall Street going in and buying Puerto Rican mortgages and knowing that people couldn't pay, and then having homes foreclosed upon. And so there's this huge issue of not only properties being destroyed, but of properties being, there just being this like endless cycle of systemic exploitation. And so because there's such a high rate of foreclosures, going into a community like this and saying, okay, whether this building is like foreclosed, or it's, let's say it's like an abandoned school, but a habitable property, abandoned school, abandoned apartment building, abandoned church, let's take this habitable property and actually make it livable. It's habitable, let's make it livable, let's make it comfortable.
There's an org that's doing that in the abandoned warehouses in areas like Detroit right now.
Exactly.
It's very interesting. Like they grow they're trying to grow cannabis and have like maker spaces and have people live there, and also they're kind of interesting stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's the idea of saying that let's take these habitable structures and let people live in them for free, so long as they're actively contributing to their community. So let's say like the city of San Francisco spends $30 million cleaning up needles and feces every year. Well, you could actually have people go through and accomplish tasks from the city to live in housing for free. And so the city could cut back on their budget by having labor given to people that are already living in homes that are owned by the city. It's really simple. It's actually a really simple idea. Like if the city or private sector, whoever already owns property, let's have the person who owns that property assign different systems of tasks to people so you can actually earn that income through engaging in a process of incentivized civic responsibility.
Okay, incentivized civic responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is for those that want a universal earned income.
Yeah.
So it's not just given to everybody, but rather this is a civic engagement. You can get earned income that way. So it's kind of like a city job of doing something civically that's important, engaging with your communities. Interesting, and then earning income and earning housing as well.
Yep, you earn access. And the other, so I mean specifically for San Francisco, what I posited is that the amount of cafeteria waste that happens from LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, like every major tech company here, if you were able to give people training programs that could allow them to have jobs and just build, whether it's like a series of tiny homes, like there are many different ways that this model can be executed. But the foundation of the thesis is granting access for incentivized civic responsibility. And whether that's access to economics, education, housing, food, all of the above, every basic resource that you would need, it's providing access in a model that's actually incentivizing accomplishment and thus providing greater education, greater opportunity, greater skill in the workforce for people all over, and for training programs for companies to actually put people into like a pre-staffing process before they're even hired. And I think there's a way to, and it's not only through housing. There are many different ways that the universal earned income can and will play out. But I think that we're shifting more toward that primarily because basic income, you don't value something really if someone just gives it to you for free. You might take that $1,000 and be, oh cool, like now I'm gonna get an extra TV a month, but not really change my life circumstances. We need to enable people to be put in communities and situations that can create a standard for them to uphold themselves to, that can encourage them to change the way they live and to be more inspired and to be more free and
find meaning for themselves in life.
Exactly.
And maybe universal basic income wouldn't help people find meaning in life. Maybe it would help people find meaning in life. Maybe earned income's the right way to go.
Yeah.
What do you think about death? What were your thoughts here that you wanted to share? We love talking about death.
Yeah.
Because there's like this void pre-birth and there's a void post-death, and then everything in between is life, and then it's kind of interesting what goes on the other sides. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, my thesis on this, and this is obviously a way longer conversation. I think we actually have a podcast about this that hasn't been released.
Yeah.
But
We talked about this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. My real thesis on death is that we don't die. I don't believe that we actually die, and there are many different levels at which that takes shape and form. But there is an energy that we carry through us in life. It's the same energy that I was talking about earlier today, what flows through you and what you carry and what you emit. And that energy, although it can take many different shapes and forms and personalities, that energy is a form of matter and it cannot be created or destroyed. I actually asked a very prominent Buddhist, I said, well, what happens to life if it does not reincarnate? And he, in meditation, without saying anything, directed my attention to a ladybug crawling on the ground, and directed my attention to the grass growing in between the folds of concrete, and said the energy goes back to all forms of life. And so there's a level at which we are both all in this together, but the process, like it's that pulse that exists, whether we do or not, but we're all a part of it. Because the pulse that lives in our physical body is not merely a pulse that exists in us. It is a pulse that is representative of everything that is, of all that is. And that we exist regardless of this pulse, because we live in that one.
The pulse of all that is includes us individually, and we live in that pulse of all that is. So therefore, there is no life and death. There just is all that is. It's so difficult to get this. I love the idea of a pulse, though, of...
You know, the Egyptians had no word for death.
Oh, that's,
They called the process of dying that the soul would be walking, and that our soul was merely walking from this life into the next life. And whether we choose to walk and be a human, or there are some people who might want to become completely formless and just become a part of the earth. There are some people who may transcend and become a part of all that is. And there are those of us who stay as bodhisattvas, participating in the cycle and hopefully bringing more humans out of the samsaric wheel that is life.
One thing I know for sure is that I know nothing. I love you, Toni Lane. This has been super fun. This has been super fun. We didn't even really get to talk much about ancient civilizations besides what you just said about the Egyptians.
I love you too,
and death.
Toni.
Ron does love you.
I love you guys.
Yeah, I love you.
I was going to say there will be plenty more conversations.
Plenty more conversations with Toni on the show to actually be able to talk about this. I'll close out and then we'll have Toni sing our way out. It was really profound learning about spiritual bypass as an individual, like that spiritual bypass where it's just that misalignment. And then also,
why do you close the show and then start the show back up again? Why do you do that? I don't understand why you do that.
It wasn't really
why
that.
Do you close the show and then start the show back up again?
That's not what it was.
Wrap it up.
That's not what it was.
We're at 110. Let's go.
Last thing. That's all it was. Much love to you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to your comments below. It'll be exciting to hear what you think about all of the different nuance that was talked about. Also, go and check out Toni's work in the comments below. All of it's down there. Go follow her. And Ron, thanks for producing and directing. Everyone, much love. Go and build the future. Go manifest your destiny into the world. We love you all. All right, and let's get that beautiful voice on the way out.
I never had a dream come true till the day that I found you. Even though I pretend that I moved on, you'll always be my baby. I never found the words to say. You're the one I think about each day. And no matter where life takes me to, a part of me will always be with you, you. And one more. I just want to finish the first song. Mm-hmm. And when the night is new, I'd be looking at the moon, but I'd be seeing you. Oh my gosh. Ugh.